say normally a birthday's not a big deal, but yeah, you hit 40 and it's a little different perspective. I didn't think the age itself would be that big of a deal, but you know, certainly I turned into one as I did a little reflecting. You think about your childhood years and goofing around in college, and you're just, you know, learning like a maniac. And then in my 20s, I went, you know, gangbuster, just getting involved in all sorts of things and immersing myself in leadership, getting a graduate degree, and really pursuing the maximum that I had. And you know, even in the 30s, you know, kept going with a bang, applying all the things I learned. And then into the 30s, it just priority shifted. And you know, I don't know if it's because I had older children or what, but you know, 40 makes you feel mortal. You know, and hopefully I have 40 more years left. But you know, in the event that I don't, there's a lot of things that I want to do. And I spent so much time in the church as a kid. My parents had me there 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week, and you know, had a lot of good friends there. But since we lived so far away from them, they couldn't be truly good friends because I'd only see them for that hour or 2 hours that we were there, and spent a lot of time with my neighborhood friends because I had a lot more time there. Church friends seemed to be a little bit more transient too. People in my neighborhood stayed put. You know, in high school, when I started driving, then I got to choose who to spend time with, and had a really good relationship with a couple of close friends in high school. Of course, met my wife in high school, and we dated and got married in college, and got married young. We were engaged young, and you know, having a kid, you know, moved up the date of the wedding a little bit. So I was 19 and first time dad. I was really tough. Not one to shirk my responsibilities. Continued to go to school full time so that I could get a degree that would have meaning and not be one of the statistics. Was working nearly full time, living at my parents' house in the basement. Set my son's crib up in the hot water heater room. Makeshift kitchen in the common area, and lived that way for 2 years. Got a job right out of college. That was great. Moved out to Ohio, became an engineer, and had my second kid. And didn't waste any time. Had my third kid by the time I was 23. So 3 kids, wife, mortgage, car payment, professional job, and wasn't as involved at church at that time, 96 and 97. Went a couple times a week and skipped every couple of weeks or a few weeks. And as an adult, I'd put on a lot of weight, gone from 180 pounds to 240 pounds. Complete life of inactivity. Youth pastor at church asked me to be a youth sponsor, and I wasn't I wasn't wanting to do it, but my wife had been working with him for, you know, a year. Spent most of my free time, you know, doing stuff for the church, and within a few years I was doing some, you know, pretty big things, leading large scale productions, writing them. And you know, people trusted me, and I got a lot done, mobilized a lot of people, brought home a significant amount of awards for the youth that were in the youth program with my wife, and she did music and I did drama. which is really funny because in school I was deathly afraid of being on stage. I had a speech impediment that I had to go to speech therapy for, and had stage fright. I remember standing in the back for any Christmas production or anything that I was kind of forced to participate in, and here I am leading dramas and acting in them and being on stage. And I was really challenging myself on who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and really pursuing this idea of God's will in my life. And as a high school student, college student, the last thing I wanted to do was go into ministry. And 20 some years later, I think back, and there are a lot of statistics on people that leave ministry, and you look at Bible colleges and what they call full-time ministry, and how churches refer to full-time ministry, and I just I don't find any scriptural backing for that. If anything, I find examples for not doing that. Certainly Paul didn't collect money necessarily for his preaching. He was with Priscilla and Aquila, tent makers, and worked on that. And several times he brags about not taking money, but taking collections for poor people. This idea of the ministry was something that was always something very disinteresting to me, and just seemed incongruent with who I was and what I wanted to do. And now at 40, doing this reflection, I'd have to say that there's pretty prescient of me to think that, because now I don't think that people should be involved in strictly a full-time ministry, earning income off of the tithes. When 90% the church income is spent on paying salaries and buildings and running internal ministries, and maybe 10% is given away to missions work. That's a sad day in America. And even though we are the wealthiest Christian nation, and we give a significant amount of resources globally, I just think about how much we could do if we weren't sequestered away in buildings that we've constructed to proclaim our greatness internally. The church building itself and the institution that it is, and calling itself the church, and I think Jesus would cry if he were here, and we were talking about how awesome it is to join a church or be a member of a church. And to him, joining the church is becoming a Christian, or deciding to follow him, deciding to be one of his disciples. And there's no church building. We're the church. And 1998, I had an evangelist speak a word to me, and God wanted to do through me. I thought that was very strange, and didn't understand how my two worlds could collide. And reconfirmed again a year later that indeed I was supposed to go out into the world, and not this protective church environment that I'd been raised in, this cocoon since I was 6 or 7 years old, that I'd spent time in this internal facing group that's judgmental and homophobic and boycotting, and certainly I was among those. A very vocal leader and very vocal opponent to things of the world. And I know even still today, I've never had an alcoholic drink, and never used an illicit drug, and a lot of people think that's weird. And, the woman I've ever slept with is my wife, and so there's a lot of things that people would consider crazy that may have been built on biblical principles or may have been built on tradition. Certainly, think about Jesus being called a glutton and a drunkard. His first public miracle was turning water into wine. You think, okay, Adam, yeah, you're not drinking this. That's not necessarily biblical, and probably isn't, but it's okay. It's a choice I've made. Certainly, committing myself to one woman is biblical, and I intend to maintain that, for the rest of my life and or her life. And I've put my kids in church ministries for them since they were little, and always wanted them to spend time around people who believed similarly, and to be taught the principles that would help them in life, and help them live according to God's principles and beliefs. And they don't turn out perfect, and you start to question your ability as a parent, but I'd like to think that there's some very beneficial foundational elements that will guide them and teach them who they are as adults and what they do as adults. And my daughter's wants to be a pastor, or married to one, and my middle son wants to go to a Christian college, which I had no interest in doing, and wants to pursue business, a career in business. And my oldest just has a great heart and loves people. And think about this next chapter. My wife and I will be empty nesters. About a year and a half.